Paper hearts, the gallery lights cast harsh shadows across Olivia Reed's photographs, making the empty room feel even more desolate. 6 months of work, and only 2 pieces sold. She slumped against the wall, phone pressed to her ear. I understand. Dr. Patterson. Yes. I'll find a way to make the payment by Friday. She hung up, tears threatening. Her brother's medical bills were mounting, and the experimental treatment remained his only hope. Olivia locked the gallery and trudged toward her second job. Temporary office assistant at Meridian Tower wasn't glamorous, but it paid when she wasn't making mistakes, which lately seemed to be constantly. Reed. Conference room set up? Now. Her supervisor barked as soon as she arrived. The Thorne presentation starts in 30 minutes. She hurried to prepare the room, arranging water pitchers and setting up the projector. Everyone knew this meeting could make or break Meridian's future, securing investment from Thorne. Industries meant survival in the cutthroat corporate landscape. Rushing to finish, Olivia tripped on a cable. The laptop connected to the projector crashed to the floor with a sickening crack. The screen went black. What have you done? Her supervisor's face drained of color. I can fix it, Olivia whispered, though she knew she see OULDN, single quotes, T.20 minutes. Later, she stood trembling in the corner as Dominic Thorne himself entered the room. Tall, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes, he commanded attention without effort. At 36, he'd transformed his family's failing company into a technological powerhouse. Though rumors circulated about the stipulations in his late father's will that he'd narrowly satisfied to maintain control. The presentation was a disaster. Without proper visuals, Meridian's team stumbled through explanations while Thorne watched with an unreadable expression. His assistant occasionally whispered in his ear, once glancing toward Olivia. When it ended, Olivia knew she was fired. She gathered her belongings, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Reed. She froze at the deep voice behind her. Dominic Thorne stood in the doorway of the small break room. Mr. Thorne, I'm so sorry about you're a photographer. Mr. Thorne, it wasn't. A question. Confused, she nodded. How did you? My assistant is thorough. He stepped closer. Your gallery showing last night. Impressive work. Olivia blinked, stunned. He would know such a detail. Thank you, but it wasn't successful. Perhaps because you're too busy working jobs you're not suited for. His gaze was evaluating, not unkind. I have a proposition for you. Don't understand. I need someone with an artistic eye for a special project. 3 months of work, exclusively for me. He named a figure that made her gasp. ... Impossible. ... Impossible. Something flickered across his face. But there's one condition. Olivia should have been suspicious, but the amount would cover her brother's treatment with money to spare. What condition? The project involves accompanying me to certain events, helping craft a specific public image. You'll sign an extensive confidentiality agreement? He paused. And you must promise not to develop any personal attachment to me. She almost laughed. That won't be a problem. People often say that. His expression darkened. They're usually wrong. Why me? She asked. Because you need this as much as I need someone who sees truth through a lens. He extended his hand. Do we have an agreement? Olivia hesitated, then shook his hand. Yes. Neither realized they'd just signed away more than they intended. Reflections in glass, the black town car glided through Manhattan's evening traffic, its tinted windows shielding Olivia from the outside world. 2 weeks into her arrangement with Dominic Thorne, and she still felt like an imposter in this sleek vehicle, in the designer dress that hugged her frame, in this entire fabricated reality. Remember, Dominic said, his voice low as they approached the charity gala. Tonight, we're celebrating our 6-month anniversary. We met at the Whitney Museum fundraiser. You were photographing the event. I was captivated by how you captured light. Olivia nodded, committing the story to memory. And we've been inseparable since, she added. The practiced lie, now familiar on her tongue. Their eyes met briefly in the dim car interior. In the artificial light, his features seemed softer, less intimidating than during their initial meeting. She'd spent the past fortnight learning his habits, how he took his coffee black before dawn, how his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly when receiving certain phone calls, how he absently traced the platinum ring he wore on his right hand when, deep in thought. "Your brother's first treatment is scheduled for tomorrow," Dominic said as the car slowed. "I've arranged for a specialist from Johns Hopkins to consult." Olivia's breath caught. "That wasn't part of our agreement. Consider it a bonus," he straightened. His already impeccable tie. "I expect results, Ms. Reed. Your brother's improved health means you'll be more focused on our arrangement." But something in his averted gaze suggested another motivation. One he wasn't ready to acknowledge. The car door opened, and camera flashes exploded around them. Dominic's hand found the small of her back, steady and warm as they navigated the press line. "Mr. Thorne, is this confirmation of the rumors?" a reporter shouted. "Dominic, over here! Who's your date?" He pulled her closer, his smile practiced but convincing. "This is Olivia Reed, acclaimed photographer and the woman who's changed my perspective on many things." His arm tightened around her waist as he leaned down, whispering in her ear. "Smile. Like you mean it," she did, surprising herself with how natural it felt. Inside, the ballroom dripped with opulence crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, New York's elite in their finest attire. Olivia studied the room through a photographer's eye, noting composition, light, the stories hidden in plain sight. "You're analyzing," Dominic observed, handing her a flute of champagne. "Force of habit," she replied. "I see narratives everywhere. And what narrative do you see here?" He gestured subtly toward an elderly man across the room surrounded by sycophants. "That's Harrison Weber." She recognized the tech magnate from news articles. "He's smiling, but his eyes keep darting to the exit. He doesn't want to be here." Dominic's mouth curved slightly. Impressive. "Harrison is announcing his retirement next week. Only 3 people know that information." "For now," she corrected, his almost smile transformed into something genuine. A flash of warmth that vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Come," he said. "There are people we need to convince." Throughout the evening, Olivia played her role. Perfectly the artistic soul who had somehow captured the attention of Manhattan's most eligible bachelor. She laughed at the right moments, touched Dominic's arm with practiced affection, and answered questions about their relationship with carefully constructed authenticity. It was near midnight when she excused herself to the powder room, needing a moment away from the performance. In the quiet sanctuary of marble and soft lighting, she studied her reflection, barely recognizing herself beneath the expertly applied makeup and borrowed confidence. "He's never brought anyone before," a voice said behind her. Olivia turned to find an elegant woman applying lipstick. "I'm sorry, Dominic," the woman clarified. "I've known him since prep school. In 20 years, he's never brought a date to these functions." She capped her lipstick, evaluating Olivia with shrewd eyes. "Either you're exceptional, or he's finally playing the game Vincent forced on him." "Vincent." The woman's eyebrows rose. His father. The old man's will was quite specific about Dominic's personal life requirements for maintaining control of Thorne Industries. She extended a manicured hand. "I'm Elise Winters, by the way. Childhood friend and perpetual disappointment. To my own parents." Olivia shook her hand, mind racing. Olivia read. "I know who you are." Elise smiled enigmatically. "Or who you're pretending to be." Before Olivia could respond, Elise was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of expensive perfume and unsettling questions. When she returned to the ballroom, she found Dominic in conversation with Harrison Weber. As she approached, Dominic extended his hand toward her without looking, as though he sensed her presence. His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and secure. "Ah, here she is," he said, drawing her closer. "Harrison was just saying he admired your exhibition at the Kleinman Gallery last year." Weber nodded. "Psh. Your series on urban isolation was remarkable. Such honesty in your work." Olivia managed to thank him, though her mind was elsewhere on Dominic's thumb tracing small circles on her hand. On Elise's cryptic words, on the realization that their arrangement might be more complex than a simple business transaction. Later that night, as the car took them back to their separate lives, Dominic seemed distant, staring out at the city lights. "Did I do something wrong?" she finally asked. He turned, studying her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. No, you were perfect. After a pause, he added, too perfect, perhaps. What does that mean? It means I'm beginning to forget this isn't real. His voice was so quiet she barely heard him. And that's dangerous for both of us. The car stopped. Outside her modest apartment building, before she could exit, Dominic reached across, his fingers brushing her cheek with unexpected gentleness. Your brother's treatment begins at 9 tomorrow. The car will collect you at 8. His hand dropped. Away. Good night, Olivia. She stepped out into the cool night air, watching as the sleek vehicle disappeared into the darkness, carrying with it a man whose secrets were beginning to intrigue her far more than they should. In her apartment, she found a package on her bed, a professional-grade camera she'd coveted for years but could never afford. The note simply read, "To capture truth." Olivia ran her fingers over the pristine equipment, knowing she was stepping dangerously close to breaking their one condition. Whispered truths rain lashed against the windows of Dominic's Hamptons estate, turning the ocean view into a blur of gray and white. Olivia curled deeper into the library armchair, her camera beside her, forgotten as she lost herself in the leather-bound volume of poetry she'd discovered among Dominic's extensive collection, 1 month into their arrangement. And here she was, spending a weekend at his secluded retreat, under the guise of building their public narrative. In reality, Dominic had back-to-back video conferences, leaving Olivia to explore the sprawling property that revealed more about him than he probably realized. His library surprised her most, not the expected financial tomes and business biographies, but classics, philosophy, and dog-eared poetry collections with notes scribbled in margins. The Dominic Thorne portrayed in business magazines wouldn't underline. Neruda's love sonnets are right, remember this, beside Whitman's verses on humanity. The library door opened, admitting Dominic himself, looking uncharacteristically casual in charcoal slacks and a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled to expose forearms marked with what appeared to be ink stains. "You've found my sanctuary," he observed, approaching her chair. Olivia held up the book. "I wouldn't have pegged you as a poetry enthusiast. There are many things you wouldn't peg me as." He settled into the chair opposite, stretching his long legs toward the fireplace. "My father considered it a weakness. Literature, art distractions. From the business of making money, yet you've built a room around them." His smile held a hint of defiance, perhaps because they were forbidden. Lightning flashed, followed by a thunderclap that rattled the windows. Olivia's phone rang her brother's ringtone. "Excuse me," she said, stepping away to answer. "James, what's wrong?" Her brother's voice came through, tight with pain. "Liv, I'm at the hospital. The treatment, there's been a reaction. The call disconnected." Panicked, she tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. "I need to get to the city," she said, turning to find Dominic already on his phone. "The helicopter can't fly in this storm," he told her, his expression serious. "But I'm having my driver bring the car around. We'll drive back immediately." She questioned, "Do you have meetings? They can wait." He was already guiding her toward the door, his hand steady against her back. "Your brother cannot." 3 hours later, they rushed into Mount Sinai Hospital, Dominic's security detail clearing a path. In the sterile waiting room, Olivia paced while Dominic spoke quietly with the medical staff, his authority somehow extending even here. Dr. Miranda Ellis approached them, her expression cautiously optimistic. "Ms. Reed, your brother had an adverse reaction to the treatment protocol, but we've stabilized him. He'll need to remain hospitalized for monitoring, and we'll need to adjust his treatment plan." "Will this setback?" Olivia couldn't finish the question. "We have alternatives," Dr. Ellis assured her. "I've already consulted with Dr. Abernethy from Johns Hopkins. We're developing a modified approach." Olivia nodded numbly. "Can I see him?" As Dr. Ellis led her toward James's room, she glanced back at Dominic, who stood watching her, his expression unreadable. For the first time, she realized how little she actually knew about this man who was now entangled in the most personal aspects of her life. James was asleep when she entered, his face pale against the hospital sheets. At 28, he looked younger in his vulnerability. reminding her of the boy she'd practically raised after their parents' accident 15 years ago. "We're going to be okay," Dr. Ellis assured her. "The modified treatment has an excellent prognosis." Olivia sat beside her brother, taking his hand. "Thank you." Hours passed. Night fell. Nurses came and went. And through it all, Dominic remained making calls in hushed tones, arranging for specialists, ensuring James had a private room with the best care. Near midnight, James finally woke. After assuring her he was feeling better, he glanced toward the door where Dominic stood, maintaining a respectful distance. "So that's him?" James asked weakly. "The boyfriend you've been hiding?" Olivia hesitated, the lie sticking in her throat. "That's Dominic, yes." James studied the man with surprising alertness for someone recovering from a medical crisis. "Bring him in. I want to meet the guy who's got my sister looking at him like that." "Like what?" she whispered. "Like he's a photograph you can't quite get into focus." Reluctantly, she waved Dominic in, making introductions that felt simultaneously false and strangely authentic. "Thank you," James said directly, "for helping my sister. She doesn't accept help easily." Dominic's eyes flicked to Olivia. "I've noticed. She's been taking care of everyone else since she was 13, James continued, ignoring Olivia's warning look. "Our parents died in a car accident. Liv gave up a scholarship to raise me instead." "James, stop," Olivia murmured. "You need to rest." "Mr. Thorne should know what kind of woman you are," James insisted, his medication making him unusually forthright. "Beginning to understand," Dominic said quietly, when James drifted back to sleep. Olivia stepped into the hallway, emotionally exhausted. Dominic followed, his presence somehow comforting despite their complicated arrangement. "You never mentioned your parents," he said. "It wasn't relevant to our agreement. It explains much about you." Leaned against the wall, studying her with new awareness. "Why you accepted my proposition. Why you're so fiercely protective of your brother." She looked away. "We all do what we must." "Indeed," his voice softened, "but few do it with such grace." A nurse approached, informing them visiting hours were over. Dominic immediately produced some form of authorization that allowed Olivia to stay. Of course, he would have that kind of influence. "I'll have the car returned for you in the morning," he told her, "and I've arranged 4 meals to be delivered for both of you." Impulsively, Olivia reached for his hand. "Thank you for everything." Today, his fingers closed around hers, warm and reassuring. "I understand family obligations better than most." Something in his tone made her look up. "Your father's will. Elise Winters mentioned requirements about your personal life?" Dominic tensed almost imperceptibly. "Elise talks too much. Is that why you needed me? Is it because of stipulations in your father's will?" For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, his thumb absently tracing circles on her hand as it had at the gala. "My father built Thorne Industries through ruthlessness and manipulation. He was equally controlling in his personal life. When he died, his will specified that I must be in a stable relationship to maintain control of the company past my 36th birthday." His jaw tightened. "A final attempt to force me into his vision of an appropriate life. And your birthday was 2 months ago. The board granted a temporary extension based on our supposed relationship." His eyes met hers. "I don't believe in love, Olivia. I've seen what it does, how it destroys. This arrangement allows me to fulfill the letter of the requirement without the messy reality. So I'm just a convenient solution to a business problem," she said, trying to ignore the inexplicable hurt his words caused. "Initially, yes," his gaze intensified. "But you're proving to be much more complicated than anticipated." Before she could respond, his phone rang. With visible reluctance, he released her hand to answer it. "I have to take this," he said already, moving toward the exit. "Get some rest, Olivia. I'll check on you both tomorrow." She watched him walk away, struck by the realization that their carefully constructed facade was developing cracks. Neither of them had anticipated on beneath. Those cracks lay truths far more dangerous than fiction. Fractured masks, the flash of cameras was blinding as Olivia and Dominic emerged from the theater. Their fingers intertwined with practiced ease. 2 months into their arrangement, and they had perfected their public performance, The Tender, Glances, the protective arm around her waist, the whispered comments that made her laugh genuinely. "Dominic, over here," reporters called. "Any comment on the Weber acquisition rumors?" Dominic smiled diplomatically. "No comment on business tonight. We're celebrating Olivia's gallery opening next week." This, at least, wasn't fabrication. Somehow, amid their charade, Dominic had arranged for Olivia's photography to be featured at the prestigious Lancaster Gallery, a legitimate exhibition of her work. Not part of their deception. "Let's get dinner," Dominic suggested as they slipped into the waiting car. "That new place in Tribeca you mentioned." Olivia studied him in the dim light. These past weeks had revealed versions of Dominic Thorne the public never glimpsed, the man who spent hours in his home office with classical music playing softly, who kept a notebook of sketches he thought no one knew about, who visited his mother's grave monthly with fresh peonies. "You're staring again," he noted, amusement warming his voice. "Professional habit," she deflected. "I'm always looking for the perfect shot." His expression softened. "And what do you see when you look? At me?" The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither was prepared to address. Before she could answer, his phone rang, his private line that rarely activated. "Thorne," he answered sharply. As he listened, his expression darkened. "I'll be right there." "What's wrong?" Olivia asked as he directed the driver to change course. "Victor Lancaster is attempting a hostile takeover of Thorne Industries. He's called an emergency board meeting." His jaw tightened. "He's questioning the legitimacy of our relationship." The car sped toward Thorne Tower, its gleaming spire illuminated against the night sky. Inside, tension pervaded the executive floor as Dominic ushered Olivia into the boardroom where 12 people sat around a massive table, expressions ranging from concerned to smugly expectant. At the far end sat Victor Lancaster, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the cold eyes of a predator. Beside him was Elise Winters, who couldn't quite meet Olivia's gaze. "The happy couple arrives," Lancaster said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "How convenient that Ms. Reed was with you this evening, Dominic." "Get to the point, Victor," Dominic replied coldly, his hand protectively at Olivia's back. Lancaster slid a folder across the polished table. "Evidence that your supposed relationship is nothing but a carefully orchestrated fraud to comply with Vincent's will conditions, a contractual arrangement with an expiration date." Olivia's blood ran cold as board members opened identical folders containing photos of her initial meeting with Dominic at Meridian Tower, copies of the confidentiality agreement she'd signed, bank transfers to cover James's medical expenses. "Where did you get these?" Dominic demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. Lancaster smiled thinly. "Let's just say Ms. Winters found her loyalty, negotiable." Elise finally looked up, her expression a complex mixture of defiance and regret. "I'm sorry, Dom. He's offering me the European division." "Always the opportunist," Dominic said flatly. Lancaster continued, addressing the board. "Vincent's will explicitly required a genuine relationship. This charade disqualifies Dominic from leadership. As the second largest shareholder, I move to assume control of Thorne Industries, effective immediately." The room erupted in overlapping voices. Olivia felt herself fading into the background as corporate politics unfolded, till Lancaster's voice cut through the chaos. "And Ms. Reed, or should I say the paid actress, perhaps you'd like to confirm our findings? For a suitable compensation package, of course, exceeding whatever Dominic offered." All eyes turned to her, including Dominic's. His expression unreadable, yet somehow vulnerable in a way she'd never witnessed. In that moment, Olivia Reed, who had spent 2 months photographing the truth while living a lie, made a decision that had nothing to do with contracts or conditions. "Mr. Lancaster," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Your investigation is impressively thorough, but fundamentally flawed." She moved to stand beside Dominic, taking his hand. "Yes, Dominic and I met under unusual circumstances. Yes, he has generously covered my brother's medical expenses. But your conclusion that our relationship is fraudulent," she shook her head, "that's where you're wrong." Dominic's fingers tightened around hers, a silent question. "The agreement you found was initial," she continued. What developed afterward wasn't planned or contracted. She looked directly at Dominic as she spoke. It just happened, despite both our intentions otherwise. Lancaster's triumphant expression faltered. You expect us to believe you conveniently fell in love? How naive do you think this board is? I expect nothing, Olivia replied. But as a photographer, I deal in truth, Mr. Lancaster. And the truth is that sometimes reality develops differently than the image you plan to capture. She turned to the board members. I broke our one condition. I wasn't supposed to develop feelings for him, but I did. The admission hung in the air, both performance and painful honesty. If that invalidates some legal requirement, so be it. But don't mistake contractual beginnings for emotional endings. The boardroom fell silent. Dominic stood frozen beside her, his composure finally cracked. An older board member cleared his throat. Victor, these accusations are serious, but ultimately unprovable either way. The spirit of Vincent's will was that Dominic demonstrate capacity for commitment. I see no evidence that requirement hasn't been met. Murmurs of agreement spread around the table. Lancaster's plan was unraveling. This meeting is adjourned, declared the board chair, gathering her papers. And Victor, I suggest you reconsider your position with this company. As the room emptied, Olivia and Dominic remained standing, still connected by their clasped hands, neither speaking until they were alone. You didn't have to do that, he finally said, his voice rough with emotion he rarely displayed. I know. You said we should discuss it somewhere else, she interrupted. Suddenly unable to remain in this room where truth and deception had become hopelessly entangled, the ride to Dominic's penthouse passed in tense silence. Once inside the expansive space with its floor-to-ceiling views of the city, Olivia moved to the windows, needing distance to think clearly. Did you mean it? Dominic asked, pouring 2 glasses of bourbon with hands less steady than usual. Or was it just another performance? She accepted the drink, buying time. Does it matter? It saved your company? It matters to me. His intensity was palpable. I need to know if I'm the only one breaking our condition. The admission hung between them, a truth finally exposed. When did it change for you? She asked softly. He set down his glass, moving closer. The hospital. Watching you with your brother. Understanding what you'd sacrificed. His fingers brushed her cheek. You showed me what genuine connection looks like, Olivia. Something I've spent my life avoiding. Why avoid it? My parents. Marriage was a battlefield. Father used love as a weapon, wielding my mother's devotion against her until it destroyed her. His voice roughened. I swore never to be that vulnerable. No? Not all love destroys, she whispered. Doesn't it? His eyes held hers. Look at us building something real from artificial beginnings, breaking the only rule that mattered. Olivia set her glass beside his, closing the remaining distance between them. Maybe some rules are meant to be broken, his hand cupped her, faced with a tenderness that belied his powerful presence. Our agreement ends next week. I know what happens then, he asked, vulnerability evident in the question before she could answer. His phone rang again the 3rd time that evening. With visible reluctance, he checked the screen. It's the hospital, he said, immediately answering. Olivia watched as his expression transformed from concern to relief. That's excellent news. Yes, she's with me. I'll tell her immediately. He ended the call, turning to her with genuine joy. James's latest tests show the treatment is working. Complete remission is now the expected outcome. Tears sprang to her eyes as relief washed through her. Really? Dominic nodded, pulling her into an embrace that felt like coming home.
Oh, really?
In the warmth of his arms, the question of what happened when their contract ended seemed simultaneously more urgent and less important. Because whether they continued by choice what had begun by arrangement, nothing between them would ever be the same. Unveiled heart's dawn light filtered through the blinds of Olivia's apartment as she carefully packed her cameras. Her gallery exhibition had exceeded all expectations, critical acclaim, substantial sales, and inquiries from international curators. After years of struggle, her career was finally taking flight, and yet her thoughts remained fixed on Dominic Thorne and the contract that had officially ended 3 days ago. They hadn't spoken since the night of Lancaster's failed takeover attempt. Dominic had been called to Tokyo for an emergency negotiation, leaving before they could finish their conversation. His only communication had been a text message. "We'll talk when I return. I promise." Now he was back. According to the business news she'd been compulsively checking, and the promised conversation loomed. What would remain of them when obligation no longer bound them together? Her phone chimed with a message from an unknown number. "Check your email," he puzzled. Olivia opened her inbox to find a message from Elise Winters, containing only an attachment to scanned document that made her blood run cold. It was an addendum to Vincent Thorne's will, apparently enacted if Dominic fulfilled the relationship clause. Should my son comply with the terms regarding his personal life, the following condition activates immediately thereafter. Dominic must sever all romantic attachments and enter into a business marriage with a partner of the board's choosing. Specifically to secure the Lancaster-Thorne merger, my short-sighted son has repeatedly rejected. Olivia read it twice, understanding washing over her. This explained Lancaster's desperate move, Elise's betrayal, and subsequent regret. It explained why Dominic had kept his distance these past days. He was trapped in a more elaborate version. Of the same cage he'd occupied before, her doorbell rang, startling her from her thoughts. She opened it to find Dominic himself, uncharacteristically disheveled, as though he'd come directly from his flight. "You know," she said simply, seeing the answer in his eyes. "Lancaster sent the document to my hotel in Tokyo." He stepped inside. Closing the door behind him, "I've spent 3 days with lawyers trying to find a loophole, and there isn't one." His voice was flat with defeat. "If I want to keep control of the company my grandfather built that my father nearly destroyed, I have to marry Christine Lancaster within 30 days. Olivia absorbed this, the pain sharper than anticipated. Victor's daughter. The merger through marriage. A medieval solution to a modern problem. Dominic ran a hand through his already rumpled hair. "My father's final lesson in control from beyond the grave. What will you do?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, with an intensity that made her breath catch. "That depends entirely on you?" "Me. I don't understand." 3 months ago I made you an offer based on mutual benefit. Transaction." He moved closer, his composure cracking to reveal the man she'd glimpsed in rare, unguarded moments.
Ow.
"I'm making a different one, based on something neither of us expected. Dominic, let me finish." His hands framed her face with exquisite gentleness. "I've spent my life believing love was a weakness to be avoided, that vulnerability was a liability. Showed me otherwise." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm prepared to walk away from Thorne Industries. From my inheritance, from everything I've spent my life building." His voice roughened with emotion. "If you'll have me." Olivia stared at him, stunned. "You can't be serious. Your company is just a company." He smiled slightly. "A wise photographer recently helped me see that some things matter more than corporate empires. Legacy? My grandfather would understand choosing happiness over obligation. It was my father who confused the two." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "The night we met, I asked you to promise never to fall in love with me. Now I'm asking something infinitely more difficult." "What?" she whispered. "Love me anyway. Despite my flaws. Despite my past. Choose a future neither of us planned, but both of us want." His vulnerability was complete. His walls finally dismantled. "I love you, Olivia Reed. No contracts. No conditions." Tears blurred her vision as reality rearranged itself around this confession. "That's not fair. I was prepared to let you go." "I know." He pressed his forehead to hers. "But I'm not prepared to let you go. Not for any price." Her hands found his, fingers intertwining. "There must be another way. Something that doesn't require such sacrifice." "Perhaps." Hope flickered in his eyes. "My legal team is exploring options, restructuring, taking the company public, creating a trust. But those are details. Complications." He drew back slightly to meet her gaze. "I need to know if we're facing them together." The question hung between them no longer about pretense or performance, but about possibility and promise. Olivia thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a spilled coffee and a desperate bargain to this moment of absolute truth She thought about the man she'd discovered beneath the carefully constructed persona, about the parts of herself she'd reclaimed in his presence. "Your father's condition," she said softly. "It required you to avoid attachment, to protect yourself from love, yes. Then perhaps the greatest rebellion isn't walking away from his company." She drew him closer. "Perhaps it's loving completely, despite his warnings. Building something he claimed would destroy you." Understanding dawned in Dominic's eyes. His lesson against him? Exactly. Her smile felt like freedom. So yes, Dominic Thorne. Yes to facing complications together. Yes to finding another way. Yes to love without conditions. His response was to kiss her, not for cameras or appearances. Not as part of a performance, but as a man who had found something more valuable than inheritance or empire. Later, as they sat planning their counter-offensive against Vincent Thorne's final manipulation, Dominic's phone rang. He answered, listening intently before a slow smile spread across his face. "It seems," he said, after ending the call, "that my grandfather anticipated my father's posthumous manipulations. My legal team found a codicil to the original will, predating my father's addendum. It specifies that any attempt to force my personal decisions beyond the initial relationship clause renders all subsequent conditions null and void." Olivia stared at him. "So you're free?" "We're free," he corrected, pulling her into his arms. "To build something genuine from artificial beginnings. To break every rule that doesn't serve us. To capture truth through whatever lens we choose." Outside her apartment window, the city continued its relentless pace, unaware that within these walls, two people had discovered that sometimes the most binding contracts are the ones written not on paper, but on hearts finally unveiled.